What is the authority granted by the Constitution to Congress? And why does it matter? Congress doesn't have plenary power to do whatever it wants to. It's very specific. We have Article 1, and there's a long list of powers. It's the longest article in the Constitution of Congress's power. Very, very specific. It can raise taxes, borrow money, regulate commerce, establish a uniform rule of naturalization, coin money. It's a long list. You can take a look at it, particularly Section 8 of Article 1. And you can study it and study it and study it, and you will not find the power to conduct a criminal investigation because it violates separation of powers. Congress is made up of politicians, some of whom are reprobates, some of whom are, of course, statesmen. But Congress was never set up to conduct criminal investigations of any sort, or criminal investigations as part of a Justice Department or U.S. Attorney's effort to target an individual or a group of individuals. So beyond the outrageous makeup of the January 6th Committee, the entire enterprise of the January 6th Committee is unconstitutional. Now, what's very troubling is there's not a single judge in Washington, D.C., not one, who has reached that conclusion. And yet this goes to the heart of our constitutional construct. You can't have Joe Biden making legislation by executive orders just by claiming national emergencies. You can't have Congress investigating really not for legislative purposes, but criminal purposes and to set up individuals and violate the Bill of Rights. You cannot have the courts legislating and executing. The whole thing becomes a mess. And that's exactly what the left in this country wants. It's exactly what Nancy Pelosi wants. They do not believe in our constitutional construct. 3 separate branches, equal branches, balancing and challenging each other, each fighting for their own turf and so forth. They want to control it all. That's why they want to destroy the Supreme Court and pack it with like-minded ideologues. That's how they control this massive bureaucracy that's not even present in the Constitution. That's why when they're in office, they use executive orders like somebody handing out legislation. And that's why they use Congress, when the Democrats control the House or the Senate, but particularly the House, as a criminal investigatory body. And that's exactly what's taking place. And this is really appalling. If we intend to keep our republic, this needs to be called out. All the legal analysts on all the channels, they sit there and they play the game. Former federal prosecutors, professors, former defense counsel, former this, former that. They get into the weeds about a hearing. What did we learn in this hearing? We learned that this hearing is illegitimate. This January 6th hearing is not only illegitimate because of all the reasons I've talked about in the past, lack of opposition, exculpatory evidence, cross-examination, and on and on and on, but because Congress isn't supposed to be doing this. All these interviews that have been taking place, that have been compelled by this committee, this one-sided committee, all those transcripts are eventually going to be turned over to the United States Department of Justice and the U.S. Attorney's Office to be used against these individuals. Now, those interviews would not be taking place, or it would be quite a different scenario if an ongoing criminal investigation, the U.S. Attorney's Office asked these individuals to provide depositions. Their lawyers would tell them no. No, unless they could cut some kind of deal. All that's been thrown out the window. And you could tell by the latest hearing, the 8th hearing, primetime hearing that the media salivate over and slobber over, what a joke this is, how they tried to humiliate Senator Hawley. It's really not about January 6th, how the main witness about January 6th, Nancy Pelosi, has been effectively immunized by the committee, the members of whom she appoints and she had to approve. So you can take a look yourself. Article 1 provides no such authority, none, to the Congress of the United States. So everything that they're doing, which is openly and affirmatively criminal in nature, is a violation of separation of powers. And separation of powers goes back to Montesquieu. You can see in the Federalist Papers, the framers of the Constitution mentioned Montesquieu. So when you get these phony Republicans like King Cheney going on and waving the Constitution around, well, they're not waving around our Constitution. Perhaps it's the 1934 Soviet Constitution, but it ain't ours. Now let's get into these hearings for a minute. Again, what exactly is going on here? Well, this last hearing, 187 minutes before Donald Trump issued a video. And they had a grand old time at that hearing. They were laughing it up. They thought what they were doing was so cool, trying to embarrass the former president, trying to embarrass Senator Hawley and so forth. Did you find that convincing? Did you find that serious? Did you find that substantive? I can only imagine every one of these reprobates on this committee, if we could have access to their iPhones, their texts, their emails, their documents, their staffs, their family members, I'm sure we'd find sleaze all over the place, because most of them are not exactly Daniel Webster. Most of them are not exactly Thomas Jefferson. Most of them are not exactly Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So what did we learn so far? 8 hearings, public hearings. In this 8th hearing, we've learned nothing. Nothing. Nothing we didn't already know. Oh, there's some little thing there. Well, you know what? That's not exactly correct. These hearings have confirmed, ready? That Donald Trump had no direct role whatsoever in the January 6th violence inside the Capitol building. None whatsoever. Now, how do we know that? Because they haven't presented any. They've had videos, they've had texts, they've had graphics, they've had emails, they've had documents, they've had witnesses. Do you remember one sentence where Donald Trump directed or ordered or even encouraged a violent attack? Not innuendo, not opinion, not inference, but any actual fact? No, you haven't found any, because there isn't any. So what really has happened here is, despite 1,000 witnesses, excluding Nancy Pelosi, of course, hundreds of thousands of documents, despite God knows how many months of investigation, they have found nothing. Zero. And it's really quite remarkable. Now, they talk about this 187 minutes till the president issued a video. Well, if he were leading an insurrection, ladies and gentlemen, the video wouldn't have been the video that he released, would it? Basically telling supporters and others to stand down, to cut it out. 187 minutes. That's 3 hours and 9 minutes. Big deal. You have members of this committee who still have not issued statements condemning the plot to assassinate Associate Justice to the Supreme Court Brett Kavanaugh. A lot longer than 187 minutes. You have members of this committee who were cheering on Black Lives Matter as they were rioting, maiming, and even killing. Remember that? It's more than 187 minutes. I think we're on 2 years now. So let's not play games with this stuff. But if Donald Trump were seriously interested in an insurrection, he would have issued a video. And his video wouldn't have said what it said. His video would have been a call to arms, right? He's leading an insurrection. He would have called everybody who could hear his voice to come to the Capitol armed. Armed to take over the Capitol building. He would have called the state's military, whether they would respond or not, to come to the Capitol building, encircle it, arrest the vice president, and arrest other officials, members of Congress. That's an insurrection. He would have declared that's an insurrection. He didn't do any of those things. As a matter of fact, he didn't do any of the things people told him he might want to do in order to, quote unquote, hold on to the presidency. What am I talking about? He didn't send out the military to get voting machines, as some had suggested. He didn't send out the Department of Homeland Security to get drop boxes, as some had suggested. He didn't fire the acting attorney general or the acting deputy attorney general suggested. He didn't appoint a special counsel, as some had suggested. He didn't do any of it. He didn't do any of it. But he would have done all of it if he were actually leading in a direction. We wouldn't have to be holding 8 hearings. It would be obvious to all of the American people, so we get disgruntled former administration employees. Boy, that's never happened before. We get people giving their opinions and their inferences, all one-sided. This committee has had all the power to do whatever it wants, and they have no fingerprints, no DNA, nothing of Donald Trump's on the January 6th violence. But they keep talking about insurrection, insurrection, insurrection. What are they talking about? Well, I'll tell you what they're talking about. They're talking about the 14th Amendment. This committee is basically the point of the spear, a front operation for the Attorney General of the United States and the U.S. Attorney, both of whom are partisan and corrupt in that sense. You can see they dropped the cases against the Colbert Nine, and a furious chief of the Capitol Police has responded to that while they're throwing a 69-year-old who's receiving cancer treatment in prison for 60 days. And they've done this to a lot of people for trespassing and parading. We're not talking about violent crimes. We're talking about trespassing and parading. Gee, I wonder how many have been charged, have the book thrown at them for trespassing and parading. They're hoping Donald Trump will be indicted. Their surrogates are out there. Andrew Weissman, remember that reprobate? He's out there telling them they're not pushing hard enough to get Donald Trump. It shouldn't be bottom up and the middle out. It should be the top down. Get Trump. Pinch his advisors. Get him, get him, get him. They're obsessed with Trump. They don't want any investigations of Biden, the Manchurian president, and all the money that he got and his family got, the Biden criminal crime family, from these foreign entities. No. We'll just focus on Hunter. Leave the big guy, Mr. 10%, alone. The 14th Amendment, Section 3 states, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of the state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer, engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same. That's why they keep using the word insurrection. That's why they keep trying to create this national impression that Donald Trump was involved in an insurrection. That's on your calendar January 6th as Insurrection Day. That's why every host, every phony professor, every phony expert, every phony lawyer on television keeps saying an insurrection. It was an insurrection. Insurrection. New York Times, insurrection. Washington Post, insurrection. Committee members, insurrection. Why? Not only do they want Donald Trump indicted, but just in case, they're putting together a report to accuse Trump of leading an insurrection and then claim to serve in the presidency as a result. Under the 14th Amendment. This has never been tried against a president or a person running for president before. We don't know how that is adjudicated, but they don't care. They're absolutely reckless. That's like their two impeachments and their criminal investigation of Trump and so forth and so on. I'm not a special pleader for anyone. I'm a special pleader for this, the Constitution of the United States. I don't go along with the mob. And the mob is in control right now in the name of the Democrat Party. They control all the instrumentalities of government. They control almost every single news platform, almost every single college and university, and they control the narrative. Well, I'm not going along with it. The fact of the matter is what this committee's doing, what this U.S. Attorney's doing, what this Attorney General's doing, what the media are doing are repugnant to our republic.
Want to see more Mark Levin? Go to LevinTV.com and subscribe now.